Welcome to the Laverne Church of the Brethren's weekly audio message. Here at the Laverne Church of the Brethren, we create a Christian community called by Christ to be inclusive, caring, and peace-minded. We affirm that people of any race, ethnic identity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, age, economic status, faith tradition, or life situation are welcome in our congregation. We believe in compassionate service, stewardship of creation, respect for diversity, and nonviolent reconciliation for differences among all people, nations, and faith traditions. We claim no creed but the New Testament as exemplified by the life of Christ. We strive to follow the way of Jesus. And through these efforts, we seek to grow ever closer to the mind and heart of God. And now let us ground ourselves as we enter into today's message. This morning we'll hear from Dr. Eric Bishop as he reflects on the significance of Juneteenth in our church, community, and nation. Dr. Bishop is a member of this congregation and has served in various leadership roles within our church, our district, and denomination. He's currently interim vice president of enrollment management at the University of Laverne. And he's just an incredible person. We're grateful for his voice, and I'm personally looking forward to learning from his message today.
Our scripture this morning is 1 Corinthians 7:21. Were you a slave when called? Do not be concerned about it. Even if you can gain your freedom, make the most of it. I'm not too active on social media. I lurk a lot and follow people and use the various platforms just to stay connected to people I did not get to see on a regular basis. It can also be a way I stay in touch with issues I care about that are going on in the world and that may not be covered initially by the mainstream corporate-led media outlets. I use it to gauge what the hot topics are and what people are thinking. I try to have friends or acquaintances from all perspectives and viewpoints, though I have been known to delete a few here and there, including family. I sometimes post thoughts, but mostly share things I think of interest. My standing here this morning is the result of one of those occurrences. There's been a bit of chatter about Juneteenth. It has become especially relevant since being signed into law as a federal holiday by President Biden in 2021. Some of the conversation is around the sheer mystery of the origin of the day. I imagine that in Florida, you likely cannot say Juneteenth, let alone read or learn about it. It should be noted that the celebration of Juneteenth is not by any means new, but it is new to the mainstream. Tomorrow commemorates the end of 244 years of slavery in the United States, kind of, but I'll get back to that. The Emancipation Proclamation, an order signed by Abraham Lincoln, went into effect on January 1st, 1863, legally freeing 3.5 million enslaved Black Americans in states not under Union control. In the westernmost Confederate-controlled territory, including Texas, however, enslaved people would not be free until 2.5 years later, on June 19, 1865. That's when Union troops arrived in Galveston Bay and announced to more than 250,000 enslaved Black people that the war had ended and that they were free. Since that day, Juneteenth has been celebrated in Texas and is, ironically, a Texas state holiday. The most recent confusion over the day comes from Greenville, South Carolina. Leaders there, mostly led by an all-Black commission, decided to celebrate the day through a theme of unity. This has led to banners posted across the city showing multiracial images in recognition of the Juneteenth holiday, including that of a white family under the Juneteenth banner. One of the results of this was a social media post from actress, activist, and social commentator Amanda Seales about the holiday. And this brings us back to how I wound up in the pulpit this morning. Ironically, it was this post that I shared on my Instagram timeline that was seen by our own Amanda Bennett. The gist of Ms. Seal's post was that Black people should not have to feel guilty about having Juneteenth be our day of celebration and recognition, and not feeling guilty about not wanting to share it with others. So Reverend Bennett reached out to see if I would be willing to do a moment of education this morning regarding Juneteenth. I did not at all find this unusual, or find this to be an unusual request, as this congregation has often been open to exploring contemporary issues occurring in society. And after all, I am the one who started it by sharing the post. So when we met to have a discussion about what this could be, I found myself thinking out loud and working to explain what this moment could be like. And I think she can attest to this. I was working through how to do this in just a couple of minutes. There is so much to unpack and how to do that justice. I don't know that she said a whole lot when I finally said, how about I just do a sermon? To which I think she was a bit caught off guard, and I also don't think hesitated allowing me this space. So here I am, standing in our predominantly white church explaining Juneteenth, and yet feeling completely at ease, or as easy as I can be in the pulpit, about being in this place and doing so. But in reality, Juneteenth is to some degree the latest in wholesale cultural appropriation. There is now Juneteenth ice cream, Juneteenth posters, t-shirts, and other commercial products, most of which, of course, are not created, sponsored, or financially benefiting the Black community. Large corporate greed will never miss a turn. I think one of the questions to raise is, can you really discuss Juneteenth and not discuss that it comes from our country's dark history of enslaving and dehumanizing generations of people due to a warped mindset and for financial gain? On the very surface level, Texas landowners got an additional 2.5 years of free labor, further enabling their opportunity at generational wealth. Juneteenth puts a brighter spotlight on the issue of slavery because it can lead to the question of reparations. We know where the conversation of reparations in general will lead us. But what about those who worked the additional 2.5 years? Wouldn't that be a reasonable conversation? Or how about an effort just to actually learn the history so we can recount it? For centuries, history was created by passing it down through the generations. Now, in some places, we don't even want it spoken about, let alone read about. I'm waiting for the day that Florida and Texas move to ban the Bible from its library because it uses the word slavery. Some research indicates that in the time of the New Testament, there were 3 modes in which a slave could be manumitted by their master. And manumission is a fancy word of saying release from slavery. First, a master's will could grant formal permission or manumission. Second, a slave could be declared free during a census. Or third, a slave and master could go before a provincial officer. We also know that this was rare and rarely easy. Being neither a historian nor biblical scholar, the numerous references to slavery in the Bible caused me to ponder whether the Bible merely reflected what was happening, or by virtue of the reference, did it condone the acts of slavery. Emotionally and intellectually, I lean to the former because of the mere fact that in the beginning of the book it reads, God created man in his own image. And I cannot imagine God making his or herself a slave. So when I think about today's text from 1 Corinthians, were you a slave when you were called? Don't let it trouble you, although if you can gain your freedom, do so. In that passage, Paul is encouraging enslaved people to pursue freedom or manumission. We know from the history some do not want learn that pursuing freedom was dangerous and even fatal. But if we continue our reading, Paul goes on to say, for the one who was a slave was called to faith in the Lord is the Lord's free person. Similarly, the one who was free when called is Christ's slave. You were bought at a price. Do not become slaves of human beings. Brothers and sisters, each person as responsible to God should remain in the situation they were in when God called them. Do not become slaves of human beings. If that doesn't say it all, what does? I know that my simple interpretation can be refuted quite easily by those who study the Bible or who have evil in their hearts. But human was not to be subjugated by human. Oh, that's right. We were not considered human. That explains how one could read the Bible, honor God, and enslave people for financial benefit. The question is, what is Juneteenth? For many, it is seen as a true Independence Day for African Americans because it was a day that there were no longer any enslaved persons in the United States, at least not officially or legally. But rarely do we get to have anything for ourselves, particularly if it is glorious or beautiful or enriching. So to have a day in which we celebrate ourselves and our history is unacceptable because it's a reminder for some why the independence was necessary. Instead, it must be shared like July 4th, America's Independence Day. That awkward feeling we have about Independence Day and why the celebration of Juneteenth is important is explained so eloquently by Frederick Douglass, who in 1852 surmised, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July?" I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty in which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence, your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy, a thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloodier than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Juneteenth is also but a reminder of what has been gained and yet what has also been lost. In the reimplementation of slavery through the 13th Amendment, the Black Codes, and the Jim Crow laws. The current onslaught of the new Southern strategy emanating out of Florida, Texas, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, to name a few, is a stark reminder how fleeting Black independence can be. Anytime we have had anything good, such as our own wealth, it has been intentionally destroyed, such as Tulsa. So there's a reason we don't want to share Juneteenth. The call out of South Carolina for Juneteenth to be a call for unity is but a reminder that the number one task of African and Black Americans and other persons of color is to walk only in the comfort of white people. The gathering of Black people without knowledge or permission is discomforting. The ability to celebrate solely and together is discomforting. And history has proven that when white people are discomforted by Black happiness and success, then it must be stopped and destroyed. Is not propagation of anti-voting legislation the answer to ensuring that there is not another president of color, or even worse, a woman of color? Are not the laws regarding reproduction rights not a dog whistle to ensure that white women continue to produce offspring to ensure that the global majority does not overtake the white populace in the United States? In all the years I have been attending this church and engaged in other churches and our denomination at a larger level, I have learned that Christianity should be simple, and yet it is made complex. Modeling our lives after the actions and teachings of Jesus Christ is simple, but we twist the words of the Bible in the most evil and heinous ways. But as complex as Christianity is and can be, so is American history, as is African American history. And while Juneteenth is a part of our history, it is also a part of all of our histories. But it uniquely comes from, for some more than others, as a stark reminder of why we must remember, even when some powers that would be would rather we not. I cannot explain the internal feeling it has and the emotions it brings, should I have to. As Ms. Seal says in her Instagram post that led me here, if you're not going to teach true American history in schools, then don't come trying to teach Black history, Black holiday, then don't come trying to take black holidays and call them American holidays. Black folks can be all right celebrating a day for black folks without feeling like we have to include other folks. I don't see Christians spinning dreidels for Hanukkah ads. We are all made in God's image, and if you trust in God, then that should be answer enough. Amen, and happy Juneteenth.
We're so glad that you listened to the message today. If you're looking for an open and affirming, peace-loving, and justice-seeking congregation, consider visiting us for in-person worship on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. We'd love to meet you.